When I did that coaching course, the one thing that I started to really understand is that you cannot coach a blanket group of agents, because it's impossible to take a real estate professional, even a loan officer, and just say, join my coaching program because I'm going to help you be better. You can't just put a bunch of people in a room and start giving value to every single person in there, because you can't touch on the different aspects of their business, because every single agent is at a different point in their business. What I mean by that is, if I'm an agent doing $30 million a year in production, the challenges I'm facing, the successes that I'm having, is far different than somebody that's doing $5 million a year in production. And that $30 million agent is facing different obstacles and challenges than the $100 million team, or the $300 million team, or the $1 billion team. Where I think real estate coaching struggles is, people can teach you accountability no matter who you are. People can teach you reporting. People can motivate you and give you drive. But tactically is different. The tactical things that you should be doing in terms of operationally, how you should be staffing, what support you need, what you need to start, what you should start to work on in order to drive more business into the funnel, the responsible parties of that. A lot of that's based on capital, a lot of it's based on your internal structure, and a lot of it's based on where you're currently at in your career and the needs that you have. Super busy real estate agents that are sitting there saying, I have a lot of clients, but I'm burning myself out. Well, they need an admin, and then they need to create leverage with a buyer broker or a listing broker, or a hybrid of that. Teams that are driving business, maybe have 20, 30 agents, whatever it is, they need to look internally to create efficiencies, because overhead becomes an issue at some point, where you have optimizing the capital spent on overhead and everything you got is always something that you need to be looking at, of how do we become more efficient, because running lean but efficient becomes important. You can't spend your way into resources to help you grow, because ultimately you don't have people working at capacity. Every single agent every single person, not agent, excuse me, every single member of your staff, before you hire the next person, you got to make sure that they're working at capacity. Otherwise, they might only have 15, 20 hours worth of work. You think because they're coming in every day and they're focusing on these things, but we need to add these things over here, now we need to hire another person. A lot of times you don't. A lot of times there's tools and resources to help subsidize the power of a person. And there's also a lot of things that can be done too to subsidize how much money you're spending on products. And so we're always looking at, every week we have an expense meeting. Every month we do a review. And then we're looking at, what are we paying for? What are the systems we got? Is it necessary? We're looking at staff and overhead. We outsource to India on several things that we do when it comes to non-consumer facing things. Because when you start to get bigger and you start to grow, you can really bury yourself in the numbers. And a lot of, let's take our company aside, because I think we're bigger than most. Let's take where we were 5, 6, 7 years ago. It wasn't the big expenses, because we didn't have a ton of them. Staff was probably the bigger expenses. Where we were getting killed, and you can probably relate to this, watching this video, a lot of you can relate to this. It's the 500 here, 400 here, 700 here, 200 here, all these little incremental things that we don't pay attention to because they seem like a small number. Those really start to add up. And so when you start to look at the whole operation and the business in itself as what's necessary versus what's not, you'll find as you grow, you get more tools to replace and try to incorporate a variety of product suites into one product suite. You start understanding that from a personnel perspective, that the more efficient you get with those systems and tools, you may not need as many people. Because your job as the CEO is to go get more business. That is the main job. The main job is growth of the company. Doesn't matter if you're the CEO of Microsoft or the CEO of JMG. How do we get more business for our shareholders? How do we get more shareholder value? And so if you're operating your team, you have to think like that. You are the CEO. You have to think, my job is to get the business in. Once the business comes in, managing that business effectively is an operational thing. Getting the business is biz dev. It's out there creating relationships. However, you got to go be the rainmaker and make things happen. That's what you have to do as a CEO. When you get big enough, then you have to get somebody internally from an operational perspective to be the COO. And they're managing the day-to-day. They're making sure that the departments are doing their jobs. They're making sure that the VPs, the directors, the coordinators, everybody knows what their job is, what their role is, and that's part of growth. You wear many hats as you're growing, and as you get big enough, eventually everything starts to carve out into these segments of the business. For us, it's processing, accounting, marketing, onboarding, training, mission control. These departments have call center. These departments have come into their own by need. But as we're growing the company here, I was wearing a lot of hats. Other people were wearing a lot of hats. We have our onboarding specialist, for example, was our old marketing girl. But ultimately, we wanted to place her in a position where she could be a leader and run a department, and that was best fit for her. Our technology group, you know, these carve-outs that you make is out of necessity as you grow a business. A lot of people don't want to have a bigger company. There's nothing wrong with that. Who cares? But if you're a smaller group, a smaller team, you still need to be looking at how do you function internally? What is the process? Process from driving more business to once the business comes in to executing on the business throughout fulfillment. Nothing works if you're not bringing in business. It doesn't matter. So you have to be focused as the leader. You have to be focused on bringing in the business. And then internally operating to where you're starting to set things in place as more revenue comes into play. So it sounds easy. It ain't. But, you know, it's just brick by brick. Every single quarter you get bigger, you get better, try to create more revenue, better systems internally. And if you just follow that pattern every single quarter and stay consistent with what you're trying to build, but also stay focused that without revenue, nothing else matters, I think you can find a winning formula there.